Dear friend, I love Twinkies, and the reason I'm saying that is because we are all supposed to think of reasons to live. Hey lads, my name is May, and today I'm going to be doing a review of The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This is my very first book review ever, so if you guys have any constructive criticism or feedback, I'd find that really valuable. Thank you. Alrighty, so The Perks of Being a Wallflower follows, I'm a proper booktuber now because I use the word follows a 15-16-year-old kid called Charlie. He's just gotten to high school, and because he's a wallflower, he's having trouble making friends and socializing and figuring out the world around him. If you're not sure what a wallflower is, from what I gather, it's kind of just someone that doesn't really fit into a specific social group. They just like to sit and watch and notice people around them and don't really participate, as it's described in the book. The whole book is written as a series of letters that he writes to his mystery friend. There are a couple of theories as to who the friend might be, but the way I took it is that he's just writing to the reader. I think that's really cute, and we get to follow along on Charlie's little coming of age story. He makes lots of friends and lots of mistakes, and it's overall such a charming and amazing book. Before I get into my little review, I thought I would talk about some of the trigger warnings. I thought that might be just good to mention at the start, just in case some people were sensitive to certain material. This is a little bit of a long list. So we have some suicide and self-harm at the start of the book. We have consensual sexual scenes, which are alright if you don't mind that, but there are also some scenes and mention of sexual assault and non-consensual sexual activity. There is lots of mention of drugs and alcohol. I know that's not appropriate for what we're discussing right now, but I love kookaburras. Anyway, and finally, mental health is a big chunk of this book, dealing with the highs and lows of being a teenager and stuff like that. From my perspective as a regular teenager, I think that the consensual sex scenes and the drugs and alcohol bits are fine. It's stuff that you hear about in high school and it's just part of the high school experience. So from my perspective, I think that stuff's alright. It's not the biggest feature of the book, it's kind of just glossed over, it's not too heavy or anything. So yeah, that's the only stuff I could really think would be of any concern when reading the book, but without further ado, let's get on to the review. Right, I'm gonna give away my rating of this book. 5 stars. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. I love it so much. And part of the reason I know why I love it so much is because I really struggled to find things that were wrong with it and stuff I didn't particularly like. But there were still a couple. First of all, shocking lack of diversity. I can't think of one non-white character. There were a couple of gay characters, which was very good. Both gay sexy stuff and straight sexy stuff were talked about the same. But yeah, overall it's kind of just a disappointing lack of diversity. I think one of the only ways to bring this book up further than it already is in my eyes is to make that change. As a white person and an ally, I'm really trying to spot these sorts of things in books, and as an aspiring writer as well, I think it's important that I take it into account and try and improve my own writing in that way. The second thing I didn't really like reading in this book was the non-consensual sex scenes and stuff like that. Obviously it's a horrible thing and it's not very fun to sit through. I don't think that should be taken as a dig at the book. This sort of stuff just happens and it's gonna have to appear in books every now and then, but obviously it wasn't very enjoyable to sit through. And finally, the only other thing I could think of that I didn't like about this book was kind of the cliche YA rebelliousness, if that makes sense. I feel like if an author wants their teen character to be edgy, they're just like, oh, she listens to the Smiths and Fleetwood Mac. And it wasn't really like that, but like it was. And don't get me wrong, I love a character that listens to old music. It brought up some of my favourite classic songs and introduced me to new ones. But I feel like at times it just had the capacity to come across as a bit twatty. I don't know, I feel like I haven't seen the film, but from the impression I got from the trailer, the movie really plays on this. They're like, oh, wallflower, edgy teen, I feel infinite, and it's like this whole thing. That's one of my biggest pet peeves in books. I really can't stand that sort of stuff. But other than that, they're the only really bad things I have to say about the book. Okay, I feel like books come to you when you need them. Sometimes. Like with every teenager, there's a lot of things about life that I'm questioning and struggling with and trying to figure out in my head, and this book is that on paper. I found it so comforting to read along with Charlie as he was figuring out the same things that I am. I just feel like one of the main reasons I liked it so much was because it depicted exactly how I was feeling. Secondly, it kind of gave me a new perspective on life. kind of. I know that sounds really cheesy, but I'm a very stressed person and I overthink things so much. It can get to the point where the simplest things will literally leave me drowning in this like pit of worry. And so it was really nice and really refreshing to read from a character's perspective that just saw the world so simply. If I have an essay to write, I would spend hours stressing over it if my points were good enough and then perfecting every little word, etc. But then when Charlie was writing an essay in the book, he just wrote it and took feedback, and that was it. And his simple outlook could be applied to pretty much anything he discusses in the book, and it was really nice. But as much as Charlie differs from me in seeing the world in a simpler way, it also feels like he's been digging in my skull and has read my thoughts. Last night I was reading this book out loud to my boyfriend and I said, "Is this not my head?" And he said, "Yes, this is your head. This is exactly what is going on in your head and it's on paper." It is so beautiful to have something that you think about and stress about all the time written on paper and think that someone else understands and someone else gets it, and it's lovely. I'm mostly talking about how Charlie has this obsession with the glory days, just in terms of how like he's obsessed with how to act during high school so that when he grows up he can tell his kids all the fun things he did. The thing is, I think about that literally all of the time. And I have never before this seen it written down somewhere or anyone else experiencing it. Also, the author has a really wonderful way of delving into mental health issues and describing them thoroughly. One example of this was when Charlie got disassociated at some point. I can't remember what it was, but he was showing symptoms of derealization, which is something that I struggle with. I can't express to you how simply amazing it is to see stuff that you experience written down on paper. You can just look and go like, yep, tick, somebody gets it. It's lovely. I think I cried actually, and while I can't speak on behalf of someone that suffers with depression or severe trauma or anything like that, I think the way he describes it and the way that Charlie deals with it is really, I don't know, it's just genuine. Which brings me to my next point. Everything feels so bloody real. Literally, it feels like you're reading somebody's diary of actual events that have actually happened. Particularly with his family. He talks about being in the car and arguing with his family and family reunions and how dodgy they are because everyone's arguing. I find the way that he describes the dynamics in friendships in the book really interesting. I feel like as I'm growing older, I'm making lots of different friends and it's happening the exact way that it's described in this book. Also, Charlie has his fair share of awkward experiences, which I think can be really charming, and you really sympathize with Charlie in these moments. It's to a point where I think you couldn't read this book without relating to it. It is such a beautiful little story. I'm honestly stressing out because I don't think I'm expressing enough with my words how much I love this book and how much the story is amazing. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but please trust me, it is so good. I think you should read The Perks of Being a Wallflower if you are a teenager, if you are struggling to find your place in the world and figure things out in your head. I also think it might be a bit refreshing in like a quarter-life crisis or something. Like, the reason I was reading it last night is because I was freaking out and panicking about all my responsibilities, etc. And I read it and I saw how simply Charlie looked at life and it cleared my head immediately. Is this book worth reading? Oh my god, yes, please do it. I would pinpoint a good age to read this book at 15, 16, not really below that. If you are below that age, maybe hold out for a little bit. Some of the content can be quite heavy, but I think everyone in their late teens should give this a read. And so obviously my rating for The Perks of Being a Wallflower is a big fat whopping 5 stars. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for watching. Again, if you have any feedback or constructive criticisms for me, any way I can improve my book reviews, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be very grateful for that. Otherwise, I hope you're staying safe wherever you are. Please have a good day and eat some chocolate, maybe some Twinkies as well if we follow Charlie's rules. Some handy petitions are down below. I've made a new rule for myself. Every time I upload a new video, I have to sign one of the petitions on my list. So if you guys want to join me in that endeavor, you are welcome to. Also, if you think there are any useful petitions that I need to add to my list, please let me know. But other than that, thank you for watching and I hope you're having a good day and I'll see you in the next one.